Hi, I'm Justine Campbell. I'm a positive psychology coach and counsellor. I'm the person that people come to when other therapies haven't worked. I help my clients get back to their core so they can show up in their lives as their true, authentic selves, so they're not just surviving, but thriving.
So it was 2015 and you were just 14 when I started coaching you. And at the time you had a desire to grow in confidence. And to you, confidence meant to sing in front of a small group of people. So you exceeded that goal that same year when you sang in front of over 1,000 people at the TED Talk in October 2015. And then from then, you relocated for high school. You went from strength to strength in high school. You then got into Columbia, where you are now, studying music and business management. You've released numerous singles. You continue to write your own lyrics and draw on numerous instruments. And instruments could be other people's voices, whatever, to express yourself in your unique, authentic way. Often though, when we talk about desires, we need to look at the desire beneath or behind the desire, the deeper desire. And I think having caught up with you, I think, that deeper desire for you was to truly find your voice, not just your singing voice, but your voice, and to have the confidence to show up in different arenas in your life, even if at times they're uncomfortable, they're lonely, they're challenging, right? And I think that, from what we spoke about, was the deeper desire. What do you think?
My desire is to kind of search for something that continues to make me feel whole and feel like myself, to feel like I'm continually improving and, having this belief in myself that I'm going to continue to pursue what I've always been pursuing, and being true to my own vision in that sense. And a big bonus of that would be to share my voice with other people and have enough confidence to do that.
So we caught up on a lot of things, particularly over the past few years, but there are a couple of stories that you shared with me that I wanted to go a little bit deeper with today. It's often in a reflection of our experiences that we're able to identify learnings, or even identify where we may need to reframe the stories that we're telling ourselves from that experience, right, to help better serve us today. So the first one was when you relocated to New York to start at Columbia in the midst of the pandemic. What was sort of your guiding values that was pulling you through that?
I started Columbia during the height of the pandemic, but I was in New York, in my family's apartment. So obviously I was lucky enough to be in New York, which is where I go to school. And the difficult part of it was, obviously everything was online. So it was just by nature very isolating, doing classes, meeting people online. Of course, I was also living alone for the most part, also with my siblings, but they had lives of their own. So I just felt pretty alone. And on top of that, my music and my passion, it thrives when it's shared with other people and done among others. And so that was challenging because back in high school, I was kind of surrounded by opportunities that, most of them I made for myself, but had grown so familiar with that environment. So going from a small school to this huge university where I didn't really know that many musicians, didn't know where to find and look for opportunities, that was very challenging. And so in terms of how I overcame that, I think it was definitely a slow process. I think I just worked with what I had. So, I study music, so I'm lucky enough to, have a few people that I meet online in my music classes. And I had like a few people that I knew who did music just from family friends, and people that I'd talked to when I was trying to get into Columbia to like see if Columbia is good for music. So very like 2 or 3 connections from that. And I guess I just tried to not necessarily like pull from them as much as I could, but like, appreciate those connections as much as I could. So I just, reached out to them and tried to create meaningful like relationships with those people first. And I think it just started to snowball. Like once I met them and got close to them, I met people that they knew, and it obviously was very slow. But like retrospectively, that's that's how everything happened.
When you relocated to the States for high school and you struggled with that because a lot of your friends were still in Hong Kong and you were in the States, and you had your music as a tool to work through those emotions, and also as a way to connect with people, old friends, and to make new friends. It sounds like you did the same thing in New York, but were you writing much during that initial period?
I tried to, but I really struggled. I think because I was lacking those connections, I almost felt like a blocker. Like I would try to write, but nothing would really come of it because I was focusing so much energy onto other parts of my life.
Yeah. We spoke about values, and that values being like that light. And how do we know when we've lost our way? How do we know when we've become disconnected or, have put aside our values? And it's for you, one of those behaviors would be like, if you had said to me then, I'm not writing and nothing's coming out, that to me would be like alarm bells, alarm bells. So that happened. When we know, okay, something's happened, what can we do to get back in alignment with our values? That value of creating music, of connection, this. So looking back, what did you do, or could you have done better, do you think, to have brought you back to that?
I think take time. Maybe if I had taken more time for myself and just let myself, exist without always needing to like make friends or, I don't know, feel worthy of being at Columbia. If I just let myself like sit with my thoughts and my emotions, which I think I've become more comfortable now, and so now I'm able to. But I think back then it was very much, it got pushed to the back because I was struggling with, whether I belonged in that community and whether, I just like who I was, I guess, without all the institutions and things that I had grown up.
Support, and that, what you're talking about, to be able to sit with yourself, this is self-compassion, right? And it's the antidote to shame, the things that you're saying. Am I worthy? Am I enough? Right? I'm not good enough. I'm not this. I'm not that. Shame. And the antidote to that is to just douse it with self-compassion, to say, I am enough. I am worthy, right? And to give yourself permission for what you need, to write yourself a permission slip, old school permission slip. I give myself permission to just sit with these feelings, right? I give myself permission to show up as me. As you've spoken about, self-compassion, I think, is a huge lesson for you when you're in those moments, to sit with it and to be uncomfortable. And it's okay. And it's, I think I told you I saw Seal recently perform. I'm a huge fan. And he stood up there and he said, remember, behind those gray skies, and there are gray skies, there's always a blue sky. Feelings are like clouds, and they pass, they move, they change, right? They're temporary. Sometimes when we're in that, it just feels like they're never going to, so we have to hold on to hope. We have to hold on to that light. the other story I wanted to go into, which I think was fantastic, and I actually went and watched this video, was the story you told about the Battle of the Bands at Columbia, and that you had signed up to do it, and then you had what we call a vulnerability hangover, that you're like, oh gosh, what have I done, right?
Yeah.
Can you share that story with us?
So in my school at Columbia, there's an annual concert called Bacchanal, where a bunch of really famous, Columbia gets a bunch of famous artists to perform as a sort of treat for the students. And there's also a Battle of the Bands, which happens right before the concert, and that's where I think it's like 8 or so student bands compete, and an audience votes, and then whoever wins gets to open for all these big artists. And so, I'd known about that competition for pretty much like since I came to Columbia, because it was a huge deal, and I kind of signed up without really thinking too much about the actual prospect of performing. When I kind of got granted permission to compete, or I guess chosen to compete, as I was preparing for it, I kind of stopped and thought about the actual act of performing, and just got really kind of anxious about the whole idea, because I was scared of, I think mostly the fear came from, being scared of like competing, and then not winning, and feeling like I made an embarrassment of myself by even trying. And
It's like, as you were stepping into, literally, you were going to step onto a stage, into an arena, and those voices of fear and scarcity, of that comparison, that fear of not being good enough, of somebody being better than me, that I'm not talented enough, and comparison was a big one for you. And if you failed, what would people think?
Exactly. Yeah, that's always a fear of mine. Just what would people think? Being scared of. In my head, I'm always comparing myself to others, which is, one of my something that gets in the way a lot.
We all always compare ourselves, or people compare ourselves to others, but we never compare ourselves to people that are less than us. So you're not comparing yourself to someone like me who loves karaoke but cannot sing, are you? Who are you comparing yourself to?
People that are more established, or other musicians. In that case, I was mostly thinking about someone who had won the competition 2 years before and was competing again. So I was kind of scared, because I was like, oh, that person's definitely going to win, and I'm just going to, embarrass myself. And so that was my fear going in, and I almost pulled out of the competition. I was very close to pulling out, because I was like, might as well just end it here and save myself, the potential embarrassment.
So rather than risking being disappointed, you were opting to just live with disappointment. How do you think, in hindsight, had you pulled out?
Yeah.
How do you think that would have felt for you, carrying that?
Well, that would have been horrible. I sit with things, like things just like grow for me. Like if I'm a what's it called, like a ruminator. So I would just think about that, especially like if I'm watching the competition, I'd probably go and see all the acts perform, and that would be like
just
torture. Yeah, I would be like, I honestly think that the most of the like distress would be from me thinking like, oh, that could have been me. I could have, like, I would do better, or like things like that, which is, not healthy thoughts. But
so how did you turn it around? You were about to pull out. How did you turn it around?
I think it was not wanting to experience those emotions that I just described. I knew that if I didn't, then I would just like really kind of I don't know, like be angry, upset with myself. I knew that I would regret it. So I just, because in the past, I'd never really turned things away. And I guess like I didn't want to have that like haunt me for a long time, because I knew that in the past I would always be scared of doing things, but I would always try to.
And that was that we talked about, that pursuit of excellence. So it's not perfectionism, but just that healthy striving for excellence. And that's always been a part of you. For as long as I've known you, you've always pushed yourself. I remember even when you were doing prepping for your exams for the SATs, and all those little flashcards, it's like, whoa, wow, like no one was pushing you to do that, but you were just so committed to this, to being the best version of yourself.
Yeah I think that's I sometimes it's almost a bad thing, because for classes is like kind of off topic, but like in classes I'll be doing studying for a class that doesn't really matter, but I'll still spend hours on it, because I just, in my head, it's like I can't not put 100% into something, because then I'll be kind of like disappointed with myself. So I think that manifests in the
well, I think
music.
it's about balance, and knowing you've got limited time. I mean, if something's worth doing, it's worth doing well, but having compassion to say, hey, this one I can let go a bit of, and it's not a reflection on who I am. It's okay, right? And I think that's a lesson for you. Self-compassion, giving yourself permission, I think is a big takeaway from all of this, because these things are going to keep coming up for you, Christina. And unless you do something different, you can't expect a different outcome. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how did you get yourself to that stage where you were going to compete?
I think once I made that mental shift of being like, I'm definitely going to do this, I can't kind of let myself down by turning it away or pulling out of it, I just kind of went all in. I knew that like if I was going to do it, I was going to put as much effort into it as possible to like try to win as much as I could. So, I think I pride myself on being self-sufficient in music, and I've gone through like my whole life learning a bunch of different areas of music. So that was a fun process to, arrange the music myself and get all the band members together. I was like DMing people, like some of the band members that I performed with, I'd never really met before, but I was like, I know I want a trumpet player, this player. So I went and asked some people, and that's how the band came about. And then, we rehearsed, and then everything leading up to the competition was very much like my intention, and something that would hopefully lead to the outcome.
And you showed up for yourself. This is what I love about this story, Christina, that, we talk about like that arena, and yes, we want to please others, but their opinion of you really doesn't matter. It's the people right down the front in that supporters section. And often, they're the people that not only will share your successes, but also when you lose your way or when you don't succeed, they're going to help pick you back up again. Now we have, and those people are like, they fit on a little tiny piece, 1 inch by 1 inch piece of paper, but you also need to be one of those people showing up for yourself. And from what you told me, before, firstly, you had your vision for what you wanted. You set that intention. You sought out those band members to come together. You backed yourself that I'm worthy, that I'm good enough to bring those people in. And then in the lead up to it, you then put yourself out there to say, hey, vote for me, right? like I'm worthy.
Yeah.
That's huge,
Yeah.
right? You know, that's usually what the people in the supporters section holding up banners, go Christina, go Christina. And you were there, go Christina, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
So tell me about the performance when you actually got up and you did it.
Yeah. Well, I felt great right before the performance, which, you know, I'm usually really nervous. And of course I was nervous, but I had this feeling that, you know, I'd done all that I could. And so going on, you know, of course, insanely nervous. But then as soon as I think we started playing, I just like everything just kind of clicked. And I think that night was probably, you know, one of the best nights of my life. I think I just, you know, the crowd, the energy was just perfect. And we were all really rehearsed because we had prepped so much and everything was planned. And so I just kind of relaxed and tried to enjoy myself on that stage. And I think that's what helped too, is that I think it was clear that I was comfortable and that I was soaking it in. And I think that's why it has been like, it will be one of my favorite nights and memories, because like in those moments I really was just enjoying it, rather than, you know, I'm usually thinking and thinking too much, but in those moments it was just fun and, you know, enjoying all the hard work.
You were, as you're describing this, what we call in flow. I don't know if you recall that that juggling act I showed you many years ago, this juggler that was juggling to the Beatles, oblivious to anyone in the audience. He was totally in flow. He was living in the moment. And that's what it sounds like you were. But you describe this as the best day of your life. And you describe the time you sang in front of, I don't know, 100 students in Shenzhen when you were 14, 15, as the best day of your life. And I'll remind you, and you said back then, you said, if I want to continue to have best days of my life, I need to continue to put myself out there, to take these risks, to back myself, right? So you will continue to have best days of your life. You went on then and you won, which is incredible. So then you performed with these famous artists. What was that like?
I think that day was, you know, it was a bit more hectic, a bit more out of my control, but I did kind of feel sometimes I was like, this is way out of my league. And so I think it was obviously like an insane experience seeing all the people performing on a stage that I had seen so many of my favorite artists perform on. And I don't know, I will say that night was much more stressful and much more difficult in terms of keeping myself level-headed and things like that. I think one of the things that was more difficult was that I never performed for people that didn't really know me or didn't really like I didn't, well, how do I always phrase this? I never performed for a crowd that I didn't know whether they supported me or not, if that makes sense.
Well,
so
no, it does, but you have. So you have performed. Just because they show up at something doesn't mean that they support you necessarily, right?
Yeah.
But it's the story that you're telling yourself, right?
Yeah.
Okay? It's the story. And
right.
again, I go back to self-compassion, and this is a learning for you in your journey as an artist, going back to your guiding values, right? And that connection to people, connection to music. Brene Brown, that you know I'm a huge fan of, she has, when she does talks and whatnot, she has very strict requirements in terms of the AV requirements, and she always has them turn the lights down to 50%. so that she can see the audience members, so that she can connect, because that's something that's really important to her. So for you, working out a way when you're going into something like this is, how do I connect with the audience? How do I know that the audience feels me and connects with me? How do I do that?
Yeah.
You start with giving yourself permission to ask for what it is that you need. Okay.
Yeah.
As uncomfortable as that might be, because that's who you are. And then you go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing that those supporters are there for you. They've got your back, including you. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a learning for you, because there's going to be more opportunities like this. All right.
Yeah.
There's going to be more best days of your life. And in order to have that, to be in flow, to truly show up as Christina Lee, the way you want to show up, you need to give yourself permission. Yeah. I have loved reconnecting with you, Christina. I just, it's really been fantastic to connect. And, your story is inspiring. And I'm hoping that not only will this story inspire others, but also bring you back to you and inspire yourself to keep moving forward.
Yeah.